Hello everyone, I'm Nathan Lawrence, or Nathan Lawrence, and welcome to another edition of Nathan Talks. Thank you for joining me. We're going to get right into this subject. This is a very serious subject. It has to do with the coronavirus, or COVID-19, which is affecting the entire world. I don't need to talk about it too much as far as what's going on. It's, dominating, the subject is dominating all the headlines, all the news outlets all over the world. This is the first time something like this has happened, a global pestilence, a plague, if you will, since the Spanish flu of 1918, which came upon Eurasia in the closing period of World War I, and it killed several tens of millions of people. This is the first time this has happened like this, something that is literally of a biological and a health nature that has literally affected the whole planet in this way. All around us, all around the world, nations are shutting down, are closing their borders, restricting or curtailing transportation between them. Schools are being shut, universities are being shut, events are being canceled. Just in my state alone, the state of Oregon in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, the governor declared an emergency. Many other states have declared an emergency as well. Most of the public schools have been shut down. I think they've all been shut down. Most of the universities are shut down for an indeterminate period of time, just to keep people apart from each other so this disease doesn't spread. And all meetings in my state, all meetings of more than 250 people have been ordered canceled. Gatherings, meetings, sporting events, entertainment events, meetings of any kind, church events, whatever. And beyond that, when people come together, they're supposed to maintain at least 3-foot distance. And it goes on and on and on. So obviously this is being taken very seriously, and a lot of people are being influenced and impacted by it. Many businesses are shutting down or reducing staff, or telling people to work at home, and it goes on and on and on. What I want to talk about today is what should be our attitude and our response, and what does the Bible have to say about this, and what can you do? Yesterday, my wife and I were out and about, and we were at, she was at Costco, which is, most people in the United States or Canada know what Costco is, but it's a very large warehouse market, if you will, a shopping, you can buy all kinds of things there. Huge, the place is huge. They're all over the United States, and I think in Canada as well. And she went there, it was a Friday, today's Shabbat, and she went there just to do her regular shopping, which she does. And she was shocked. She got there in the morning, and literally there are probably 500 carts outside, shopping carts outside our Costco store, which is about 10 minutes from our house, and they were all gone. And the parking lot was totally full, and people were parked in no parking areas on end caps, and literally she describes it as a wave of people were coming across the parking lot, almost like in a half panic, trying to get into the store. And she wasn't even able to find a shopping cart, and somebody brought up a shopping cart, and she got one. She went in, and the place was packed. There were so many people. And imagine this warehouse, which is hundreds of feet wide by hundreds of feet long. It's probably several acres in size. Already there were people packed, lined up at the checkout stands, and there's like about 10 or 20 of them, all the way to the back of the store. I'm guessing probably 400 feet back to the back of the store in 2 aisles going clear back and then wrapped around. And the shopping carts were full of toilet paper and water and all kinds of things. I mean, people were just like hoarding. And it's like, she just was like, I'm not going to waste all morning here. She turned around and walked out. We went to another store, Trader Joe's store, which is all across the United States. And it wasn't quite as bad, but I mean, there were a lot of people. Again, we were just doing our regular shopping, getting ready for Shabbat, getting some things in the house. And the people were lined up. The place was packed. And I'd never seen so many empty shelves before. I mean, a lot of empty breads, meats, potatoes, I mean, all kinds of things. Just the shelves were stripped bare, and not everything, but in certain things. So people are panicking because they didn't really prepare, and they don't know what to do, and they don't know what to expect. The stock market has been down all across the United States and around the world. We've never seen it drop so fast, so quickly. It kind of goes up a little bit, then it drops again, 1,000 points, 2,000 points. We don't know where it's going to go. This is affecting a lot of people. So I'm not going to go into a long thing about what you should and shouldn't do. The governments have been advising about what to do, where to go, and about hygiene and keeping yourself clean and not touching things and not getting too close to people. And that's good advice. But I want to talk to you a little bit about what I am doing and what the government is not talking about, and then what we as believers in Yeshua the Messiah, what the Bible says and what our orientation, our thinking should be, and what we can be doing spiritually. One thing that disturbs me is, at least in the United States, and I suspect around the world, one thing the government and the media is not talking about is what you can do to strengthen your immune system, to take natural nutritional supplements. They're doing a good job of talking about quarantine, which is a biblical Torah-based concept. And they're talking about, just not being around people that are sick. Don't get too close to people where you might pick up whatever they have, keeping your social distance from people, not touching people, not touching things that might be infected or might be carrying the disease. And that's all very good. Meanwhile, they're saying, hey, we're working on a vaccine. The vaccine's coming. Stay tuned. It'll be out pretty soon. And everybody's, they're getting their hopes on some miracle pharmaceutical vaccine that will cure everything. Well, I don't know if that will come out or if when. It probably will eventually, but by that time, the virus probably will have mutated into something else and the vaccine will be obsolete, which is the case with our flu vaccines that we take. Well, I don't take them, but a lot of people take them. They're for last year's flu, influenza, and not this year's. It's a way for the pharmaceutical companies to make a lot of money. And I'm not saying all pharmaceuticals are bad. Obviously, that's not the case. But it's a racket to one degree or another, and I don't buy into that. But there are natural things you can take and do. And the government is not talking about that because doesn't benefit the government pharmaceutical complex, if you will. And I find that rather disturbing and disingenuous and dishonest. But what do you expect from the devil? He doesn't really give us anything that can really help us, generally speaking. And that's just the way that is. So this is my orientation toward this coronavirus. I'm not panicked. Remember what the Bible says, for Elohim has not given us a spirit of fear or power. A spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. That's in 2 Timothy 1:7, or is it 1 Timothy? Anyway, one of those two. And the word fear there in the Greek is phobos. It's where we get the word phobia from. And we don't have to be fearful. I'm not fearful. I'm watchful. I'm aware. I'm practicing very good habits. I'm keeping my distance from people. I think, fortunately, praise Yah, I work outside, so I'm around trees. I'm not around people too much. But even when I do have to go into the grocery store, I sanitize everything. I'm very careful not to touch certain things. I wash my hands. I do my toiletries. I mean, that's just normal stuff I do anyway. And I'm not panicked about lack of food and water. A wise man prepares. A wise man prepares for his family. He has extra food. He has water. He has the things he needs. So I've got everything I need. I've been prepared for all my life. I've got enough food to last for quite a while, and I've got water. I've got water filtration and purification equipment. I've got, and I wouldn't have to go to the store probably for months. And that's just how I live. I grew up on a farm, and we prepared. We stored, we canned, we froze, we prepared food for the winter months, and that's just my mentality. I'm an old Eagle Scout, and the motto for the Boy Scouts is be prepared, and there you go. It's not a idolatrous thing for me. It's just a common sense thing. And if you're not prepared, I feel sorry for you. If you don't think you need to prepare, I feel sorry for you. I think that's foolish. Even our government tells us we need to be prepared for at least 2 weeks. We need to have food and water. And I mean, we get that message coming out from various branches of the government and from the American Red Cross and from my electric company. They put little flyers in their mailers when they send out your bill, and they say, you need to have batteries and candles and a little extra food and water, and in case there's a power outage. I mean, that's common sense. But based on all the people we've seen flocking to these grocery stores and pile high with all kinds of things, evidently a lot of people don't prepare. And this has been all across the United States. I mean, this all over the news, where people are fighting, getting into fist fights over toilet paper and all that. And it just blows my mind. But so I'm not panicking. I'm not worried. I'm aware and I'm concerned, but I'm not panicking. So this is my mentality. Again, for Elohim has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. This is the approach I take. I pray as if it were up to Elohim, but I work as if it were up to me. Let me say that again. I pray as if everything were up to Elohim, but I work as if it were up to me. That's kind of like the saying, which is, it's not a biblical saying, but God helps those who help themselves. Look, Elohim expects us to do our part. And when we can't do our part, or we're unable to, or we've done everything that we can and we come to the end of our own resources, in my experience, that's when he steps in. And the more you can do, the more that you're able to do, the more you should do to help yourself, to help your family, to help your loved ones. And beyond that, then you trust in him and he will prepare. Now, let me just tell you what I have done as far as my health. I regularly take vitamins and supplements. The older I've gotten, the more I've taken. I didn't worry about it too much some years ago, but I do now. I don't worry about it. I just do it. So I regularly take, this is probably one of the most important things you can do. I regularly take about 4,000 or 5,000 milligrams of vitamin C every day. I think milligrams are IUs, international units, of every day. That's to keep my immune system up. And evidently vitamin C, and again, I'm not telling you what to do, and I'm not telling you what works or what doesn't work with regard to the COVID-19 coronavirus. I'm telling you how to keep your immune system up, and what I do, and I do this and I don't get sick. I haven't been sick in so long I don't remember when the last time I was sick. So I take about several thousand milligrams, 4,000 or 5,000, whatever, read the directions, talk to your healthcare provider every day. I do that anyway. I also take vitamin D. especially in the wintertime. And you can go research out why that's important, why people get sick because of lack of vitamin D, basically because they're not getting sunlight, and vitamin D comes from sun in part. So I take several thousand milligrams of vitamin C D every day. Also, I recommend a multivite, or just what I take, and get a good multivite, good natural multivitamin. Also, I have heard from experts that glutathione, which is also something that really helps the immune system, as well as potassium iodide. So these are the things that I take, or I'm taking, and I take other supplements too, but those are especially useful for me, I believe, to support my immune system so that pathogens can't get into my body and get to me in the first place. Now, I also eat a very healthy diet, as much as possible, organic, natural, as close to food as close to the way Yehovah made it as possible. Eat a lot of raw vegetables, mostly organic. And I've been doing this all my life. Yes, I eat some normal foods. Of course, I eat kosher, naturally, biblical kosher. But I have eaten this way my entire life. And I have been to the medical doctor. I'm 60 years old, and I've been to the medical doctor once in my life. And that's when I broke, I came out of a tree and broke fell 30 feet out of a tree and shattered my ankle. I had to go to the doctor to have my bones set and for surgery. And if you want to go back and hear that testimony, I was miraculously healed. I was crippled for 3 years. Go back and listen to Nathan Talk #1. That's the testimony of that story, of my story on that one. But I've never been to the doctor. I've been to the chiropractor a few times. I've been to a naturopath once in my life to remove a sliver that I couldn't get out in my finger. Other than that, the last couple of years I've been to the naturopath a couple times. I guess 3 times. I go once or twice a year for just for a checkup. I'm to the age where I think that's wise to do that. But I've never been to a doctor for any physical malady, flu, colds, bronchial. Of course, I've been to the dentist, but I've been very blessed with good health, and I do believe that that's because I've taken care of my body and trusted Yehovah and followed biblical guidelines, biblical health, fresh air, lots of sleep, good food, stay in the Word of Elohim, stand on His promises. I don't get drunk. I've never used drugs. Never used nicotine. I've never been drunk in my life. I do drink alcohol, but moderately. I exercise. I'm outside, get lots of fresh air. All those things. Lots of water. All those things that are lots of fruits and vegetables. Look, all of this really helps. So you got to do your part. And beyond that, you got to pray like it's up to Elohim. And I want to go to what I call the 911 of the Bible, the 911. Call 911 for emergency. I don't know what it is in other countries, but in the United States, if you have an emergency and your house is on fire, or somebody's dying, or there's a medical emergency or something, you pick up the phone and you dial 911, and that puts you immediately in touch with emergency services, and they will, fire, police, whatever, and they will come. They will trace your call and they will come. So we call 911 or dial 911. Other countries is probably another number, but that's what it is in the United States. But for me, this Psalm 91 verse 1 is the 911 of the Bible, because it just about covers everything. And I'm not going to go through the entire psalm, but I want to pick out a few points here. These are promises from the Word of Elohim. Now, yes, we can stand on these promises, and I believe that He will protect us. You look, things happen even to righteous people. Righteous people are persecuted, they're tormented, they're tortured, they're martyred, they get sick. Eventually everybody dies. I get that. But we stand on his word and we trust him. A lot of these things that would attack other people will bypass us. I really believe that if we obey him. Let me just, before I go to Psalm 91, let's go over here to Psalm 15. I think it's verse 26. He says here, and this is the children of Israel just come out of Egypt and crossed through the Red Sea, and promises made here, Yehovah, if you diligently heed the voice of Yehovah your Elohim, this is Exodus, Shemot 15:26, your Elohim, and do what is right in his sight, give ear to his commandments, and keep his statutes. We're talking about Torah here. I will put none of the diseases on you, which I have brought on the Egyptians, for I am Yehovah Rapha, who heals you. It's I am Yehovah who heals you. That's one of his covenant names, Yehovah Rapha. That means I am the Lord who heals you. Now, you don't want to be like the pastor I had once. I heard when I was in a Christian church years ago. He was a name it and claim it, a health and wealth pastor. And so he would pick all the promises out of the Bible and he would read them and say, see, that's for us. We're Christians. That's for us. We have all this in Jesus. Well, that's not untrue. But I remember to this day, he read the second half of this verse. He reads, remember, he was one that didn't believe in the Torah, did not believe in the law. You don't have to do it. It's been done away with. Nailed to the cross. That's for the Jews. We're Christians now. We don't need any of that Old Testament stuff. Well, unless it's the promises we want to keep and something that will be good for us in his eyes, oh yeah, then we'll claim the promises. And make sure you tithe also. That Old Testament law was not done away with, the tithing law, and he was big about that one. But I remember he read, one day he was teaching about healing, and he said, he jumped into the middle of verse 26, and he says, see, we have promises in the Bible. God says, I will put none of these diseases upon you, which I have brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. He said it with all this pomp and authority. And I read that and I go, like, you didn't read the first part of verse 26. If it's conditional, if you diligently heed the voice of Yehovah your Elohim and do what is right in his sight, give ear to his commandments and keep his statutes. This pastor, he totally skipped that part. I mean, this is so ridiculous. If you do this, then I will do this. He only read the I will do this part, not the if you do this part. So, you've got to do your part. These promises are conditional upon you doing your part. In this case, keeping his commandments, practicing the hygiene laws, keeping his commandments, resting on Shabbat. Don't work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Eating the right kind of food. Don't eat pork and shellfish and all of those garbage animals that eat the garbage and eat the, teeming with diseases. I don't care if you cook it or not, it's still full of it. And you don't want to eat that stuff. There's a reason the Creator said don't eat certain types of carnivorous garbage disposal type animals. They eat the garbage off the bottom of the ocean and eat the garbage in the barnyards and stuff like this, like pigs. Anyway, I won't get into the dietary laws, but we've got to do our part. Now let's go over to Psalm 91, the 911 of the Bible. I'm going to read the first few verses. Verse 1, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of Yehovah, he is my refuge and my fortress, my Elohim in whom I will trust. Surely he shall deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the perilous pestilence. He shall cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you shall take refuge. His truth shall be your shield and buckler. And you shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor of the arrow that flies by day, nor of the pestilence that walks in darkness, nor the destruction that lays waste at noonday. 1,000 may fall at your side, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come near you. You shall tread upon the lion and the cobra and the young lion and the serpent you shall trample under feet. He shall give his angels charge over you, lest you dash your feet against a stone. I'm kind of jumping around here. And then it says, the last verse, with long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. That's verse 16. Okay, there's a lot here we could say about Psalm 91. We could talk for an hour or two on this one alone. As you can see, I've got a lot of notes in my Bible on this. But I want to hit a few high points here to specifically relate to the COVID-19 coronavirus that I believe is specifically addressed in this verse. First of all, in verse 3 it talks about the surely he shall deliver you from the snare of the fowler. A fowler is a person who catches fowls, who catches birds. In ancient times, people would catch wild birds, partridges, doves, pigeons, sparrows, things like this. In fact, Yeshua makes reference to that. He says, are not, one or two sparrows sold for a farthing or something like that, a dinar, or I don't know, whatever the money was that they used. So literally this is talking about one who traps birds and sells them for meat. So it says, look, you're not, that Yehovah will deliver you from the one who wants to trap you. Like a bird trapper catches birds. Next, it says he will deliver you from the perilous pestilence. That's again in verse 3. And from the perilous pestilence, he shall deliver you. What is the perilous pestilence? Well, I've done a little bit of research into the Hebrew here. Pestilence is the Hebrew. I'm reading from my notes now because I want to read from my notes, because if I don't, I won't say it exactly how I want to say it. So I'm going to read from my notes here. So bear with me. Pestilence is the Hebrew word deber, D-E-B-E-R, or in Hebrew it's dalet bet resh, are the Hebrew letters, and it's the root. The root of deber is the word debar, meaning a word or a thing. We could talk a long time. The book of Deuteronomy is devarim. It literally means words. So it's debar. It's a noun meaning a word or a thing. But the word deber, which is translated as pestilence, this is literally what it's saying here. It's a death-causing plague via an infectious disease, famine, or sword. Pestilence here, again, is a death-causing plague via infectious disease, famine, or sword, and can refer to a pestilence sent by Elohim as a punishment for sin or for, presumably, not obeying his word. In other words, when men fail to obey the dabar, D-A-B-A-R, the word of Elohim, then the word of Elohim becomes their punishment. If you don't obey his word, then you suffer the consequences and receive his divine word or judgment against you. You see, Elohim's word carries with it blessings and curses. His Torah, his laws, his commandments, if you obey them, you're blessed. If you disobey them, you're cursed. And we read that in Deuteronomy 28, verses 1, 1 and 15, and Deuteronomy 30, verses 19 through 20. So when we obey the word of Elohim, the Bible and his commandments, we are blessed. And when we don't obey that, we're cursed. And I will say, to the degree we obey, that is to the degree that we will be blessed and his curses will not come against us, his judgments. And to the degree that we disobey them, that is to the degree that those things will come against us. And we will be the recipients of divine judgment. It's called cause and effect. If you put your hand on a hot stove, you will be burned. If you jump off of a cliff, the law of gravity will take over and you will probably perish at the bottom of the cliff. You get my point, hopefully. And the same thing is true in Deuteronomy. We read Exodus 15, verse 26, where it says, if you diligently hearken unto my voice and will keep my commandments, my Torah and all this, I will not put these diseases on you that were on the Egyptians. So we could say also that to the degree that we obey his commandments, we will be blessed and we will not have these diseases. But if we ignore Jehovah's commandments, then the curses or the consequences of disobeying his word will come upon us. Okay, it's really that simple. It's kind of like a mathematical equation. Now, in Psalm 91, verse 4, the last part of this verse, it says, his truth shall be your shield and buckler. The word truth there is a Hebrew word emet, E-M-E-T. It's spelled Aleph, Mem, and Tav. And it literally refers to all the truth of Elohim's word from Genesis to Revelation. Remember, Yeshua said, I am the Alpha and the Omega, or in Hebrew that's the first and last letter of the Greek alphabet, but in Hebrew it would be the Aleph and the Tav. Aleph is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and the letter Tav, which is RT, is the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And Mem, remember, Emet is spelled Aleph, Mem, Tav. Mem is the middle letter in the Hebrew alphabet, the very middle. So basically, he's saying, if you follow the beginning, the middle, and the end of my word, which is truth, everything from A to Z, then you will, it shall be your shield and your buckler. What is a shield and a buckler? Well, in ancient times, a shield and a buckler was a small shield and a large shield. Soldiers in the time of, before gunpowder, they used swords and shields and spears and bow and arrows and those kind of things. And sometimes they'd have a small shield, which they could move around very quickly and block the enemy's blows or the sword or spears, whatever. But sometimes they'd have large shields that would literally block an entire man. It might be 6 feet tall or something. So basically what it's saying here is, look, Yehovah, if you make his truth the foundation of your life and the foundation and the criteria for how everything that you do, say, and think, then he will be a double protection to you. He will be your small shield and your big shield and will protect you from what? What does a shield protect you from? From the blows of the enemy's sword, from their spears, from their arrows, and whatever other weapon they have. And he will protect you from the things that are shot out, whether it be disease, famine, pestilence, fear, persecution, tribulation. I know that some of these things come upon Yehovah's people, and he knows what he's doing. But I'm telling you, this is a promise here, that if you do what is right, he will protect you. And if you do have to go through some things, then it's for a greater purpose, to accomplish his purpose, and he will give you the grace and the strength to go through it. Okay, that's a whole other discussion. Now, in verse 5 of Psalm 91, it talks about the terror by night. It says here, you shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor of the arrow that flies by day, nor of the pestilence that walks in the darkness. Now, the word pestilence here is the same word. It's deber, as we talked about before. But let's talk about the terror by night and an arrow that flies by day. Again, I'm going to read from my notes here because I want to cover this succinctly, and I want to cover all the points, and the best way to do that is to read what I've written here. So bear with me. The Hebrew word for terror is the word pachad, P-A-C-H-A-D, and it refers to anything that causes dread or that which causes a strong emotion of terror. Pachad has as its root a strong verb of fearing with an emphasis on the immediacy of the fear or the result of the fear being trembling. Hence, the use of our English word terror, which is stronger than an ordinary fear. Now, all around me with the COVID-19 or the coronavirus, I'm seeing people, they're really terrified. Now, some people are totally oblivious and have a devil-may-care attitude. Other people are taking a more reasoned approach, more balanced approach. But other people are just going crazy, stocking their carts full of food and water. I mean, the water thing, I don't get. Why are they stocking up bottled water? I mean, America is not a third world nation. You can actually go to your tap water and get pure water that is absolutely potable. And yet people are stockpiling water as if they couldn't get, COVID, they can't get water from their tap. The disease is not going to shut down our water supply or our electrical system. I don't know what people are thinking. This is what I would consider to be irrational fear, almost terror. With regard to the end times events that will come upon the earth, Yeshua spoke of men's hearts failing them from fear and expectation of those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Luke 21:26. Now, when it talks about the powers of heaven, that's probably referring to the spiritual powers of heaven, as well as governments and nations, used kind of in a metaphorical sense. So people are going to be shaking and shaken in terror because of the things that are happening around them, and many of them will be fearful and afraid to do anything, afraid to leave their house, afraid to go here, go there, for fear of whatever. And we have to be very careful to guard against that. There is a rational fear, but there's also an irrational fear. Now, my notes go on to say that the saint doesn't have to come under the control of the powerful emotion of fear, dread, or terror, because, as the scripture says, he who is in you is greater than he that is in the world, 1 John 4:4. And in all things we are more than a conqueror through him who loved us. That's through Yeshua the Messiah. Romans 8:37. And because, here it is, Elohim has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. And you can find that in 2 Timothy, not 1 Timothy, but 2 Timothy 1:7. Now, Psalm 91 says that he will deliver us from the terror by night. The word night in this verse is an obvious metaphor for the time when evil is most prevalent, at night. So it's a metaphor. Night is when the saint is the most vulnerable, for he is often asleep at this time, and if he is awake, he is unable to see the enemy lurking about and is thus at a disadvantage in defending himself. He is further disadvantaged by the element of surprise which the enemy possesses to his favor, that is, to the enemy's favor, when they sneak up on you at night. This is why the saint must pray for spiritual discernment to be able to detect the enemy's movement in advance. He must also stay under the shadow of Yehovah's wings for protection, as this chapter talks about. And again, that's a metaphor. He can call, that is, the saint can call upon Yehovah for angelic protection, as verse 11 suggests. And we read that part of it. It says, for he shall give his angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways. In their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. So we have angelic protection as well that we can call upon. And you can go check Hebrews 1:14. It says that he's given us his angels as ministering like flames of fire to protect his Yehovah's children. Now let's talk about the arrow that flies by night. Arrow is a Hebrew word that means to wound or to pierce. So anytime we let our guard or defense down, we open ourselves up to attack from the enemy's arrows. Similarly and biologically, when the protective barrier of our skin is the largest organ on our body, and it protects us from pathogens getting inside of our body. But if we have a gash or an opening in our skin, a wound, or we let something come into our mouth or through our eyes or some other opening in our body, disease, pathogens, whatever, can get into our bodies and weaken us, and they get through the barrier of the skin or get into a wound or through an opening, and they can cause infection and disease and kill us. So this is what the arrow typifies. Something which wounds or pierces. It breaks through our armor, if you will, spiritual armor or the physical armor of our skin, if we're talking about medical or biological issues. I go on, my notes go on to say, Yehovah not only promises to protect the saint from the enemies that fly at us, the enemy's arrows that fly at us by day, when we can see, but also when the enemy attacks by night, when we can't see. The enemy attacks us via frontal assault during the day, but also surreptitiously under the cover of the night when we are the most vulnerable and when we least expect him. Now, Psalm 91 verse 6 mentions the word pestilence again. That walks in darkness. And again, we talked about pestilence, we've talked about darkness, so I don't need to go over that again. And finally, in Psalm 91 verse 10, we read, "No evil shall befall you, nor shall any plague come near your dwelling." This probably is the verse that specifically, or I should say the word in Psalm 91 that specifically addresses something like the COVID-19 virus or the coronavirus. The word plague is the Hebrew word negah, N-E-G-A-H, and it refers to that which touches or strikes a person, such as a disease or a plague, when it strikes a person or comes on one's body. So that's exactly what the COVID-19 disease does. The bacterium, I'm not sure if I'm using the right, or the viruses, or whatever the correct term is. I'm not a medical professional, but they get transmitted pneumatically through droplets of water that maybe somebody sneezes on you, or they gets on their hands, or they touch something and then you touch it and it gets on you, and then you put your fingers in your mouth, and now this little viral or virus or bacteria or whatever it is, probably viral, I think it's a viral pathogen, gets inside of you, and now it starts to go to work. This is what a plague is. It's something that touches or strikes, it literally gets on your body or gets inside of you. And yet he promises here, if you make Yehovah, your Elohim, your dwelling place, your secret place, and you abide under the shadow of his wings. If you are in a relationship with him, you are under the blood of Yeshua. You have a relationship with Yeshua the Messiah. You diligently hearken unto Elohim's voice and keep his commandments, and you walk in his promises, so that his promises are yea and amen to you. He promises to protect you. Now we could go into a whole long discussion here about divine healing, but I really want to keep this video short. And let me just conclude with saying, conclude this analysis of Psalm 91 with saying, verse 16, with long life, he promises, I will satisfy you. In other words, you're not going to die prematurely from COVID-19 or anything else. And show him my salvation. This is how Psalm 91 ends. The word salvation there is, in Hebrew, Yeshua. That is the Hebrew name for Jesus. I will show him my salvation. Guys, our salvation is in Yeshua. If we abide in him, literally abide in him, as John 15 talks about, and I encourage you to go read John 15, you will have nothing to worry about. If you abide in him and you have a deep, spiritual, righteous, holy relationship with Yeshua. Now let me just conclude this Nathan talk with this. The Bible talks about in the end times, both in Matthew 24, Yeshua's Olivet prophecy, and also in Revelation. He talks about pestilence and plagues coming upon the earth, affecting the whole earth, and many people being killed. Whether this disease or pestilence is a fulfillment of those specific prophecies, I honestly don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But this is something that I have sensed for quite a while. Something like this that's literally going to shake the whole earth may help to wake people up, especially lukewarm believers who have kind of gone to sleep, spiritually speaking, in the church and everywhere. Too many of us have the attitude of all things continue as they have, as it says in, I think it's in 1 Peter, where is the promise of his coming? For since the foundation of the earth, all things continue as they have. And I hear this all the time. Everything's been going on great. Those of us, especially who live in the West, you know, we have money, we have possessions, we have jobs, we have houses, we have automobiles, we have vacations, we have clothing, we have everything we need. And many of us have let our guard down. We're not as zealous as we should be. Yeshua is, you know, we're busy with entertainment, with distractions, with the things of life. And I've been saying for years, at least with regard to the United States, I believe that something is going to happen to this nation that's going to be, it's more than just a natural phenomenon like an earthquake, which only affects one small region, or a hurricane, or a flood that's regional in nation, or even a terrorist attack like what happened in New York on September 11th in 2001. That was a local, regional thing. It did affect our nation, but it did not affect it long term. I have believed for many, many years that it's going to take an economic collapse of some kind to awake Americans and many other Westerners out of their spiritual lethargy, out of their spiritual lukewarmness, where there's going to be great privation and need, and people are going to have to call out to Yehovah. I never thought about the idea of a disease or a pestilence being part of the equation. Well, maybe this COVID-19, along with the stock market collapsing, I don't know, maybe this is going to blow over quickly and we'll be back to normal in a couple, 3 months. I don't know. I don't have a word from Elohim on this. But this is giving us a sense of what could be happening either in our generation or some subsequent generation prior to the second coming of Yeshua. And this could affect us all. So guys, whether this is it or whether it's something down the road, I would recommend that you tighten your belts spiritually, get right with Yehovah, repent of sin, get lean and mean spiritually, get yourself healthy, physically and spiritually, draw your family closer to you, get in the Word, grow in your faith, trust in the promises of Elohim. If you're living a loose life with regard to anything, with regard to the level of light and truth that you know from the Bible, I suggest that you shut off the flesh, shut off the lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, the pride of life, get back to prayer, get back to Bible study, get back into the Word, get back into fellowshipping with other people, get serious in your walk with Yeshua, hear His voice, learn what is right, what is wrong, and get right with Him. Repent of sin. Preach the gospel. Share the message with others. And I guarantee you, get your life right. Get right with Yeshua. And this could be our greatest hour. If people around us are walking in fear and are walking in spiritual and physical privation and in confusion, we will be in a position to meet them at their point of need and to share the gospel with them, to help them in their time of need, to whatever degree we're able to do that, physically, spiritually, to be salt and light, to be an encouragement for them, to pray for the sick, whatever. And this could be our greatest hour for the church in the end times. Hallelujah. I hope this has blessed somebody. May Jehovah's name be glorified. And I hope that you will take these words seriously, and I hope that they encourage you, and also at the same time encourage you to take stock of your own life, both physically and spiritually, and buckle down and tighten up for the glory of Jehovah Elohim. Yeshua is coming. Hallelujah.